Thank you for being here, and I would like to start by thanking the organizers of this panel for inviting me and speaking to you this afternoon. I will, looking at the title for this event, Growing Extremism in South Asia and Repercussions for the West, I'll focus on the latter part, the repercussions for the West, and I'll speak to you today about the nexus between asylum and Jihadism, and more specifically about what European states have done to, or what they are doing to identify Jihadism in the asylum process. Can I have the next slide, please? Thanks. I don't know if you've seen this image before. It was introduced to the presidential campaign in the United States in July or September 2016 by Donald Trump Jr. And as distasteful and also hugely flawed as the comparison may be that's depicted here, it does relate to a fear that existed and a discussion that has been going on in Europe, especially since the refugee crisis. And although the attention so far has mainly focused on Syria and ISIS-held territories, a valid question is whether this fear is justified with respect to other territories as well, and South Asia is perhaps one of them. Can I have the next slide? Thanks. I've been involved in a research commission for the Dutch Ministry of Justice, and it looked at the Netherlands and into the nexus between asylum and jihadism. And in that research, we established that generally in this context, three risks are acknowledged. First of all, the risk that jihadists would use asylum routes to enter Europe, and also the asylum procedure. Secondly, the risk that recruitment would take place among asylum seekers, and thirdly, that people residing in asylum reception centers would radicalize. Now, it's very difficult to assess these risks and to say anything about how real they are, and I won't do that. So I'll focus in the rest of my talk on the response side. So what have European states done to respond to these risks? But there is evidence that people who have been involved in terrorist attacks that have occurred in Europe have indeed used routes or the asylum procedure to enter Europe, or have radicalized after they entered Europe as an asylum seeker. And one example, for instance, is that of a 17-year-old asylum seeker from Afghanistan who in Germany in a train attacked passengers with a knife and allegedly pledged allegiance to ISIS. So what have states done in response to these risks? Well, first of all, you can see that over the last years, the attention for national security issues in the context of immigration, in the immigration domain, has substantially increased. And this has resulted and translated into a much closer cooperation between immigration services, security services, and law enforcement. And you can see that from the establishment of all kinds of information exchange structures. And in addition, increasingly, frontline professionals, the people working with asylum seekers, are called upon to assist in the detection of national security threats. And this leads to a dilemma for the organizations involved in the asylum process, because on the one hand, there is a pressure from politics, from societies, on these organizations to assist in the detection of these national threats. And this also means that the frontline professionals need instructions or indicators on how to recognize these threats. But on the other hand, there is a consensus among experts that, first of all, it's very difficult to identify jihadism or profile jihadists on the basis of behavior or appearance characteristics. And in relation to processes of radicalization, that's also something that's very difficult and complex to identify. And furthermore, using instructions or indicators or profiles may have side effects such as over-reporting or stigmatization. So the question is, how have these actors, how do they deal with this tension? Based on our research in the Netherlands, and we are now conducting a comparative research into other European countries where we see the same thing happening, we can see that a lot of trainings and toolkits have been developed in order to equip these frontline professionals to carry out this task. And these tools, lists of indicators, they instruct people what to look for, what to pay attention to, but they also carry a rather complex or ambiguous message. For instance, they give instructions on certain behavior, such as avoiding eye contact, or refusing to shake a hand with a female staff member, or wearing certain clothing or having a certain appearance. That could be an indication of jihadism. In relation to radicalization, there are indicators focusing on changes in behavior. If someone suddenly stops drinking alcohol or starts working out in the gym very actively, this could be an indication. And these professionals are told to, in case of doubt, to share their suspicions. However, they're also told that these factors shouldn't be seen independently, and they are tasked with assessing them to some extent, which is rather difficult. So, overlooking all of this, these actors involved in the asylum process are doing a lot to try to identify jihadism, but the underlying and more fundamental question that this leads to is whether they are actually doing the right thing. And it's very difficult to say whether they are. First of all, because of the nature of this information, people making reports based on suspicions they may have that someone might be radicalizing, for instance, they will not receive any feedback on that because the information continues to security services, and it's very difficult for them to give. So this means that the feedback loop, so to say, is incomplete. Furthermore, hardly any empirical research has been done into the effects, the costs, the benefits of this type of approach, the use of indicators in this context, which is also understandable because it's, again, because of the nature of the information, rather difficult to do that, and it's also, in addition, very difficult to measure relevance or success. However, I would still say that comparative research into the use of these kind of instruments is very much needed, and that is actually what I had to say to you today. So I thank you very much for your attention. If you want to know more about this research, you can find these publications online, and there's more information about the projects we're involved in at the website cicj.org.